All right, welcome to Live, Lead, and In Between, a podcast for leaders who want to be better at leading life and everywhere in between. I'm your host, and my name is Travis Jones, and it is my honor to be with you today. So, for my regular audience, I feel like I'm having to say this a lot. I'm like, it's been a hot minute since I've done this, and it always occurs when we have big things going on in my line of work, which is I work in the church, and so we had Easter and Holy Week, and all these things happened, and then I had the message after Easter, and so there was a lot going on, and I just could not find the time to actually sit down and take a moment and actually do some recording with this. But interestingly enough, it was probably a good thing. So as we talk about today's topic, but I will say that my goal is to always do at least 2 of these a month, right? If I could do more than that, if God lays something in my heart or something pops up, I'll be on here real quick, and so that's my goal. And if I don't get to it, it's just because of the nature of my life in that moment and how it's organized. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. But before we talk a little bit about that, I do want to say, if you are watching this on YouTube, if you could do me a huge favor and hit the like button and even subscribe or share this, because I don't function a lot with YouTube, but I do know that I get a lot more views on YouTube than I do anywhere else, and a lot more shares and things like that. And apparently that helps with the algorithm. And I don't know much about that. If you're watching or if you're listening or on any other platform, I'm glad you're here too. But also leave me a comment, hit like there too, or hit follow if you're on Apple. The podcast, I think they changed it from subscribe to follow now. So or Spotify, wherever you're picking this up at. But so. Like I said, it probably was a good thing that I didn't get to jump out with this, because I had to have time to process some stuff, and I'm still in a processing mode with what I'm about to talk about. But I was recently presented with the opportunity, the possibility of, I want to say opportunity, but the possibility of something becoming a reality that I have pretty much hoped for and dreamed for as long as I have felt called into ministry. Now, I'm not really going to get into exactly what that is. And for a couple of reasons. Number one, the biggest is it might not be anything. And the secondary reason is it's still in play, and I don't have a whole lot of information other than the initial interaction. But the possibility that actually was presented to me, like I said, it was something I'd hoped, that I've always felt led towards. When it was presented to me as a potential reality, it actually terrified me more than excited me. So I had to really give that some thought in thinking about my leadership and if I was ready to entertain such a possibility per se. And not only that, but was my family at a place to where I could entertain the possibility and they could entertain the possibility in a healthy way with me. And so as I prayed about this potential possibility, that I was being asked to just entertain. Literally, I wasn't being asked to do something. I was just being asked to entertain something. A term kept popping in my head, and that term was danger close. And I'm not a military guy. I like military stuff, but I couldn't really place where that term was coming from. Maybe I'd heard it somewhere or something like that. But danger close kept popping in my head. So like any thing that happens when like that kind of stuff pops in my head, I'm like, let's look that up. Let's look that term up. And I did, and it's a military phrase used in battle when forwarding and directing fire onto an enemy. Now I'm reading it right now. It means you are close enough to sustain some damage from the fire you're calling down onto the enemy. And so when I read that, and again, I don't know where I've heard that term that popped in my head, but I started to wonder why. Why is this term in my head? I mean, I kind of, the danger part and the terrifying part all kind of blended together a little bit for me, but I started to wonder why and how it applied to this sudden potential possible opportunity that was being presented to me. And it struck me that this potential thing, this thing I was being asked to entertain, was a very, it was a very big perceived threat. Like it came across as a threat rather than an opportunity to me. And like it was a threat to both how my life is currently organized. And like I said, I was going to talk a little bit about that, and my expectations about what my future may hold. It was gosh, at that moment that I realized the potential possible opportunity was actually a wake-up call that was being fired upon both the enemy, and I am a believer, and like I said, work in the church, but it was a wake-up call being fired upon the enemy, and also being fired upon my expectations and the way my life was organized. And that there was zero way that I was not going to sustain some damage to either both those things or my current way of thinking if I began to engage in this opportunity. And I hope that's making some sense. Now, all of that may sound bad, and you know, when I even say it, it sounds a little bad, but it's not. It was a shot across the bow of my life to get my attention, and it did. So how does this have anything to do with leadership? And why am I even sharing this here? Well, here's why. Because I think as leaders, sometimes we get opportunities, and there are good opportunities, there are God opportunities that are there, and there's a difference between the two. And sometimes we'll take good opportunities when they're not God, though they're good. And so how else does this relate? Well, there's three things that kind of came into my my mind and my spirit during this. And one of them was, we're going to go through these three things, is potential opportunities that you need to get ready for often feel this way. As I looked back in my life, they often feel danger close. And we're going to talk about why a little bit. And then the second is we as leaders need to constantly check our expectations, specifically about how things will work out. I want to talk a little bit about that too. And then the last one is all of this equals pay attention to what's going on in your life. So the first one, like I said, potential opportunities equaling threats. Have you ever noticed how much an opportunity feels like a threat sometimes? And it's usually the bigger ones that feel like a threat. It's not the little ones that, you know, I've got the opportunity to go here or there. It's the big life-changing ones that feel threatening and put you in a little place of unease. And because opportunities have a way of putting everything you thought you wanted into check. Questions start swirling around in your mind. At least they did for me. Like, am I ready for this? I mean, that was a big one that started popping up in my head. Do I really want this? I mean, really, is this something? I mean, I've thought about this like a long time, but is it something I really want? Am I the right person for this? What if I fail at this? I mean, that's a big one, you know, for men in general. What if I fail at what I'm attempting to do? Because I know you learn and you fail forward, and there's a whole other podcast we can do about failing forward. But what if I fail at this? What does it mean for my family? You know, can I handle the responsibility that this opportunity could bring? What about the stress? What about the time commitment? I mean, I'm already strapped now. I feel strapped. What about that? And so all of these things swirled around in my head as I was processing these things. And I began to remember, or I would say God brought to my memory a time in my life where I jumped on an opportunity that I probably shouldn't have. Now, I'm not saying that this is something I shouldn't jump on, but I remember a time when I was serving as a children's pastor that my senior pastor came to me, and we had just lost our student pastor, and he offered me the opportunity to step into the role of the student pastor. And for a number of reasons, and a lot, I was younger in the faith, I jumped on that opportunity. And part of the reason I jumped on that opportunity was because I still viewed ministry and the way that the ministry was set up as a lot like the secular world, when, you know, you have elements and ways to move on up in the ranks, so to speak. And I considered that a move on up in the rank. And really, it was not. You have to understand that in ministry, moving up in the ranks means you deal with more stuff, more like I would like to say, you deal with more garbage, right? It's similar to when my pastor had actually told me, if you can do anything else other than ministry, and be happy to do that, right? But moving on up doesn't, you haven't arrived. You are more of a servant when you move on up. But anyway, so I jumped on it, but I jumped on that opportunity for the wrong reasons. And I was leading both the children's ministry and the student ministry, more of a families pastor, but I did not have the volunteer infrastructure in place to actually do it well. And so our children's ministry was running about 100 kids on a Sunday morning. And then we had a Wednesday night where 30 or 40 would come. And then when I took over the student ministry, that opportunity became that as well. That grew very quickly, and we real quickly got to about 100 and some odd kids on a Wednesday night. And so both were running this way for a little bit. But they didn't last that way for long. And so I had gotten the experience that the opportunity had offered with that. But now that I think about it, I would never wear the T-shirt that goes with that opportunity, because it just wasn't for me. I remember the day that the moment that the student ministry part became a burden rather than a joy to do. And I remember sitting in my senior pastor's office, and I had a parent who was angry at me for something. I don't even remember what it was, but they were angry at me for something. And I remember in this moment thinking, wow, I am so not called to be this. I'm just not. And so the opportunity quickly turned into a burden. And the area that suffered, though, was the children's ministry rather than the student ministry. The student ministry was still kicking and going, and we were adding people and doing well, but the children's ministry began to suffer. So the senior leadership of our church decided that I would go back to children's ministry, and they would go on the search and hire a new student pastor. And they did that. But one of the things that happened was our senior pastor actually decided to take the role of the student pastor as well and run that ministry while we were looking. Now, was that the right call? I probably wouldn't have done it, because I don't think that was what he should be doing, but I'm not in that seat. But he did that, and we lost some kids and what, because it was kind of an abrupt shift. And it was, for another podcast, it was an abrupt shift within our organization too, for some odd reason. Never really quite got the reasoning behind that. But it was one of those that, it was an opportunity that I in hindsight discerned a little more, I probably and had I taken the time to answer, would have sought the Lord to help me answer those questions that swirled around in my head. And I would probably, in hindsight, have said, thanks, but no thanks. And to this day, I consider my taking that opportunity, though I gained wisdom out of that opportunity, I consider that one of my biggest discernment failures. But again, wisdom came from it. But why is it that big opportunities feel like a threat? Because potential opportunities have the ability to challenge the status quo that you and I have created. Our status quo, the current way things are, we have created that. And big life-changing opportunities have the ability to challenge that. And if you've discerned properly that this is where you're supposed to go and chase after that opportunity, there is almost a 100% chance that you will have to leave your comfort zone, that status quo, to go after it. And there is almost always a 100% chance that particular comfort zone you will never see again. And so you have to discern properly whether that. So it threatens your status quo. It threatens how things are organized. And if we discern that pursuing an opportunity is the correct course of action, then we have to check our expectations at the door. And so that's the second thing is checking our expectations at the door. Kind of like going to a nice restaurant in the winter, you check your coat at the door, right? Checking our expectations at the door is absolutely necessary to engage in whatever opportunity that you might be feeling led into. And the question though with that is why? Why is it so important? Well, checking your expectations. Expectations about something God is directing you into, if you discern it to be so, are dangerous because they can lead you to a place of frustration later on. Excuse me. They can lead you to a place of frustration later on. And I'm going to tell you, this past week, I have said this next phrase more times than I can count. Actually, the past 3 weeks, I've been dealing with a lot of conflict and stuff like that within the organization that I serve. And I have said frustration is your enemy over and over again, because it will lead you to places that you do not want to be, and it'll cause you to say things that you shouldn't say, things that will cause damage, things that will work against you, things that will place you in a position to have to, it can just hurt you. So when our expectations as to how something is supposed to work doesn't end up happening, we go deep inside ourselves, and frustration's sitting there knocking at the door. And all because of our own expectations about the thing that we are doing. Now, when I talk about expectations, sometimes people will hear, well, I'm not supposed to dream, or I'm not supposed to have a vision of what this opportunity is supposed to look like. And I need you to hear me. I'm not saying that at all. I don't I don't think that those things, you have to be, in order to be a good leader, you have to be able to dream and envision. But what I am saying is don't sink your dreams and your visions in concrete and look at them as permanent. When we do that, we turn our dreams and visions into expectations, and I can almost guarantee you that the expectation will develop a growth, and at some point you'll call it frustration. The interesting thing about like concrete, and I was thinking about this because I'm actually doing a little bit of work around my home, is that, concrete, it goes in pretty fluid, liquidy kind of ish. And then once it sets, it's hard as a rock. And that's kind of the way our dreams and visions or what we're envisioning about, future opportunities should be. It should go in a fluid, and it should never be allowed to set, because if you set it with enough time, then it becomes a hard substance, and the thing that's encased in that substance, only way to get that substance off is you have to chisel and break it apart, and sometimes you risk damaging the thing that's encased in that. What I've learned to do, and what I'm learning to do, because I'm still discerning this whole opportunity thing, is to engage in whatever opportunity potentially is there with a very simplistic trust. A simplistic, trusting nature, once I've discerned the thing. And what that does, though, is it frees you up. It frees you up to not get in the trap of frustration. And the statement that I use a lot is, let's see how God's going to do this. Let's see what God's going to do with this. If it's him, I want to see what he's going to do with it. He's going to provide the opportunity. If this is a God thing, then all the other things will begin to line. Now, there is faith involved with that, but after I make that statement, I just pay attention. I pay attention to what's going on around me, which is the third thing, paying attention, which is something, some people aren't good at. I actually remember sitting in math class in 8th grade, and I was horrible at math growing up. I was better at it in college, and that kind of stuff. Actually really well at it in college, but I remember sitting in 8th grade math class and being called out by the math teacher for not paying attention. And I'm sure you've had an experience like that, but I was called out by the math teacher. I was sitting kind of in the middle of the room, and she's like, "Travis, you need to pay attention." Now, she was right to call me out. She was really right to call me out because I wasn't paying attention, and my grades reflected that reality. I don't remember the teacher's name, though, and this is the funny thing, as I thought about this, I tried to remember. I was going to give the teacher a shout out, like, great job doing the right thing, calling me out, because it paid off in the end, but I could not remember her name for the life of me. But what I did remember clear as a bell was what it felt like to be called out. I felt threatened. It wasn't a real threat, but I felt threatened. And one of the reasons that potential opportunities feel threatening is because it calls you out for not paying attention. And that feels danger close, like bombs going off all around you, and that can make you uncomfortable. I said in the beginning that the way my life was organized was threatened by what I was being asked to consider. And the reality of that statement for me was that I really haven't been paying attention to how my life has been organized. Or I should say, how my life has attempted to organize me. I mean, and that was huge when, even if the opportunity goes nowhere, these things have came out of this for me. So the reason that a potential big opportunity feels danger close is because it's being used as a tool to get your attention. So what does that mean for us as leaders? It means pay attention to your life. Pay attention. Pay attention to yourself, what's going on with you. Pay attention to your family. Don't let life organize you. You organize life. And if an opportunity presents itself, a God opportunity, if you discern that it's a God opportunity and it feels danger close to you, even with discerning that it's a God opportunity, then what that tells me is that something has become dilapidated in my life or your life, and it needs some attention. And use that opportunity that has presented itself, the opportunity that's there, the potential thing, to allow God to bring into alignment that which is out of alignment. Because when you do that, you're allowing him to prepare you for that thing or the next thing, because he knows what he's doing with that. It turns the whole thing into an adventure. It actually instead of it becoming and feeling threatening and danger close, it feels like an adventure. And the phrase, what's God doing with this? I'm excited to see, comes out of your mouth rather than the feeling of I'm being threatened, it being present. It actually becomes a devastating blow to the enemy because now you have nothing that can be damaged that's present. And most God opportunities damage the enemy's assignment on your life too. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and stop. I mean, because I don't know kind of where we're at and how long we've been doing this, but, and maybe at some point I will come back and actually talk about this potential opportunity as it works itself out, and I'll have to put that on my list, and if it doesn't, I may come back and talk about it too, just to kind of give you an idea of what it was and what it is. That'd be actually kind of be fun, because I'm having to be very, purposeful about what I say and don't say in this. So, but with that said, I want to remind you that we do have a Patreon, and that's one of the ways that that I'm attempting to actually grow this channel, get more stuff and, things, microphones, computers, all that fun stuff to actually engage with this a little more, cameras. So if you're interested in that, you can actually find that in the description show notes. There'll be a link for that, if it'll allow me to do the links. I don't think I'm quite there on YouTube yet, but it will definitely be in the link for the show notes on the audio everywhere else. Maybe not YouTube, but maybe everywhere else. Again, just a reminder, subscribe, follow, that kind of thing, so that when the next one pops out, you'll get an immediate notification that it's there. So with all that said, I believe this has been Live, Lead, and In Between, and I want to encourage you to lead everywhere well. Everywhere you lead in life, lead well. And if an opportunity presents itself, remember, if it feels danger close, like that microphone was, if it feels danger close, then something needs your attention. This has been Live, Lead, and In Between. Lead well.